So we're doing the middle of this, the heart of this one another community, right? And this idea about getting underneath the weight of somebody else's life. That's kind of what it's at the absolute heart of this. You get underneath the weight somebody else bears and carry it with them. You're not just, standing alongside them giving an order, an instruction, and then going back to do your own thing. But you're actually getting in the life, underneath the weight that they bear, and the things that they deserve, the things that they don't deserve, but they still carry. You're picking it all up and assisting it with them. That using every gift that you have for the good of others rather than just for ourselves. This is what we've been getting at. One day, a guy died and found himself in the most beautiful place he's ever been. Surrounded by every form of comfort you could imagine, every desire, every whim, every impulse, immediately satisfied. And he looked around, and there were other people frolicking and shouting out orders to be taken care of. And next to him was a man wearing a white tuxedo jacket waiting to take his order. And the butler said to him, "Is there anything that you want? If you could dream it up, any pleasure, any food, any person, any entertainment, you just have to say it, and it's yours. You just ask." So obviously he takes advantage of this and tastes everything that you could possibly imagine, things he'd only dreamed of while being on earth. And about the third day or so, he was getting a little bit tired of this endless thing, and he decided he wanted to do something else. So he called the butler to his side, and he said, "I am getting a little bit bored. I think I need a deadline or something I can go do to help. I need something else." And the servant said to him, "No, sir, I'm sorry. Here in this place you are not allowed to serve others. You can only be served." And the guy said, What kind of place is this then? I might as well be in hell." And the butler said, "Where did you think you were?" It's a good little pastor story I love. Where did you think you were? One of the ways that we show Jesus that we love him is to serve other people. So it's pretty strange when Christians think about heaven as being a place of ultimate rest, this endless, everything is just handed and there's never anything else going on. You're just sitting in the backyard and it's all taken care of. While worshiping and following the man who said, "The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." If hell is a place where you can't serve, then heaven is the place where you can. And if hell is a place where each person is to themselves the center of their own attention, then heaven would be the place where others are the center of the attention. Hell's the place where the most common word that we use in the English language is I and me. We may already be there. Heaven is the place where the most common word is you. It was heaven that Paul had in mind when he said, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but let everyone look to you for the interests of others." Not your own soul, not your own souls, right? But looking into the interests of others. Only into the interests of others. He probably has heaven in mind talking about this. There's this ongoing debate that we pick up in the scriptures that the disciples have arguing over which one of them is the greatest. And if I'm going to get the Gospels right, we're going to look at them, right? There's at least 3 instances in which this occurs. And they're not the same 3 instances each time. It was framed a little bit differently. And each one there's not only a little bit of context, but the answer given to the disciples is a little bit different. So we're going to jump to 3 of them, and then I'm going to do something I said I would never do. Are you ready? Okay, the first one's Matthew 18, 1 through 9. Matthew 18, 1 through 9. At that time, the disciples came to Jesus and they said, "Who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" And he called a little child to them and placed a child among them. And he said, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like the little children, you will never enter into the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, and whoever welcomes such child in my name welcomes them. If any one of you causes a little one, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for you'll have a large millstone hung around your neck and to be tossed into the depths of the sea. Woe to the world because the things that cause people to stumble. Such things must come, but woe to the person through whom they come. If your hand causes your foot to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. For it's better for you to enter life maimed or crippled than to have 2 hands and feet but be thrown into fire. And if your eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. For it's better for you to enter life with 1 eye than to have 2 and be thrown into the fires of hell. So on this one, it comes in, the answer comes in a form of a question, right? They say, the answer, the people come to him in the form of a question. Hey, Jesus, which one of us is the greatest? And the answer comes in the form of a child. The answer is a kid, right? He just says, bring me a child. This will answer it for you. So Jesus brings the child in and he stands among them and he says, unless you change, literally the way that you would read this, right? Unless you are transformed to become like this child, you'll never enter the kingdom of heaven. Well, they should have heard it, but they didn't. Mark 10. Skipping forward just a little bit. Mark 10, verses 35 through 45. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, come to him and say, Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever you ask. What do you want me to do for you? They said, let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left. You don't know what you're asking, Jesus said. Can you drink from the cup I drink or be baptized from the baptism I'm baptized with? We can, they answered. Jesus said to them, you will drink from the cup you will drink from the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with. But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. Those places belong to those for whom they've been prepared. When the other 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John, and Jesus called them together and said, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great must become a servant, and whoever wants to become first must become slave to all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Here, first one's a question. Hey, which one of us is the best? And this time it's a request. James and John come up to Jesus and they say, hey, grant to us, one will sit at your right and the other will sit on your left. The positions of power and authority, right? When you come onto your throne. And this time our answer comes in as an object lesson with a cup. And Jesus says, can you drink from the cup of my suffering? And they say, absolutely. That's our answer. I'm sure we can. And Jesus goes on to say that the person the greatest will become a servant for all. Slave of all is a better translation. For the Son of Man didn't come to be served, but he came to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. This is the second time. You with me? Third one, Luke 22. Verses 24 through 27. A dispute rose among them. They're at the Last Supper. A dispute rose among them as to which of them would be considered the greatest. And Jesus said to them, the kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who exercise authority call themselves benefactors. But you are not supposed to be like that. Instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest, the ones who rule like the ones who serve. For who is greater, the one at the table or the one who serves? It's not the one who's at the table, but I am among you as one who serves. This time it's in the form of an argument. There's some tension amongst our disciples that have been arguing over the last 3 or so years of Jesus' ministry as to which one of them would be the greatest. And this was getting more and more heated as they continued their journey. And this time it erupts at the most ridiculous place you could imagine. They're sitting at the table, having a Passover meal, arguing which of them would be the greatest. And so while Jesus is sitting at the table, serving the cup to his disciples, a dispute rises which one's going to be the greatest. I often think the disciples don't think too terribly often before they speak. But if you were sitting in your pews and you were about to come up, AJ and I were serving you communion, and the line coming up, everyone coming up was like, I think I'm better than you, right? It's like, can you just it's a silly place to have this argument. Because what you're really doing, if you're arguing which one of you is the best, you're also arguing which one is the least. And no one's going to just take it laying down. Like, I'm not going to be in a line with AJ arguing which one of us is better and just be like, you're right, I'm a worm, right? I'm not going to just take it lying down. And so this time, the answer comes up in this weird act that is repeated or recorded in no other gospel but John. And this is, you're saying, Phil, we were just reading Luke. Everyone say, don't do this often. Okay, don't do this often. But I'm gonna blend the gospels a little bit here. Because if you put the situation of Luke 22 and John 13 together at the Last Supper, we have this awesome interaction that happens. In John, this incident's not recorded anywhere else in the gospel, but John remembers that just before Jesus serves them the last meal, he gets his 12 disciples in a little tiny room, and while the meal's being served, Jesus gets up from the table, and he goes around and he starts washing disciples' feet. So this is John 13, 1 through 7. One through 17. Didn't think that felt right. It was just before the Passover festival, and Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. So having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, but the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. And Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, wrapped a towel around his waist, and at that time poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with a towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said, "Are you going to wash my feet?" And Jesus replied, "You do not realize what I'm doing, but later you will understand." "No," Jesus said, "you will never wash my feet." Jesus answers, "Unless I wash your feet, you will have no part of me." Peter replied, "Then not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answers, "Those who have had a bath only need to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean, and you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew that one was going to betray him, and that is why he said not everyone was clean. When he had finished washing, he put on his clothes and returned to the place. "Do you understand what I've done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and rightfully so, for that's what I am. Not that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet. You should also wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is the messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." Stay there. So Jesus gets up, goes to wash feet. By the time he gets to Peter, right? Peter's had enough of this. I love Peter because I have the same saying. Peter lives eternally with his foot in his mouth. And he says what everyone in the room is thinking because Peter doesn't think. That's my favorite thing about Peter. Jesus gets to Peter, and Peter says, "Hang on, wait a minute. You're going to wash my feet?" Jesus basically says to him, "You can't understand what I'm doing for you, but understand me, one day you will get it." Peter objects again and says, "No, you're never going to wash my feet." Jesus says all this encrypted things back to him, and then Peter, he says, "Peter, unless I wash you, you'll have no part of me." Now that's union language. So Peter, unless I wash your feet, you will not be united with me, is the way that would read in the original language. You wouldn't be united with me. That's really strong language in the New Testament, especially through John. If you've read John before, it's this very strange gospel. It's got a lot of very high language all the way through it. If you really love it and remember anything in it, he says things like this: "Unless a person is born again, he will not see the kingdom of heaven." Later he says, "Unless somebody eats my flesh and drinks my blood, they'll have no life in them." It's the same union language over and over. Later he says, "Unless you believe that I am who I claim to be, you will never see the kingdom of God." And then even later he said, "Unless the seed falls on the ground and dies, it remains a single seed." This is this either-or language all throughout John. Very high union language. The lights just turned off and they won't. Hello! It's a very high union language. Very dark in here suddenly. Union language all the way through this. This either or. Unless you do this, then they don't have this. So unless I wash you, you will have no part with me. It's either or. It's not a luxury that has to be added to Peter's life. It's essential to this born again idea, this union language. It's the sacred communion between them. And so Peter detects this language. immediately, and he knows that Jesus has raised the stakes to this all of a sudden. He hears this reiterated language again. Jesus has raised the bar to it, and so he submits, and he says, well then, don't just wash my feet, wash everything, wash all of me. Because typical Peter doesn't think before he talks. So Jesus says, no, you're all clean. Well, everybody but one of you. I'm going to walk around and attempt to trip the light while I read this. In the 1930s, there was a guy by the name of Rupert Greenleaf. It's never going to turn back on. We just broke the lights. Hey. There's a guy by the name of Robert Greenleaf who actually read John 13, and he came away with a new concept. And you're going to hear it and go, this isn't a new concept. Again, 1930s. Greenleaf's idea was that America was being dominated by very large institutions, big businesses, big churches, big universities, really big workers' unions, and that these institutions were not serving us well. So Greenleaf argued that the flaw in every one of these systems and every one of these institutions was their view of leadership was fundamentally bad. Leaders were thinking of themselves as something over the union or the institution or the church or the university. They didn't see themselves as being a part of it or under it. And so he decided a new mentality should be formed. So he reads John 13 and he coins this new phrase in the 1930s to reinvigorate what leadership looks like. Do you know the phrase? Servant leadership. Boy, haven't we just driven that into the ground lately. Have you heard that before? Servant leadership? Robert Greenleaf, 1930s. It became so popular today that you probably cannot get hired unless you say servant leadership in your interview somewhere. It's like an instantaneous, you don't say it, it's just like they're moving on, right? It's everywhere. The problem is that when you say it, no one knows what it means. Because everyone just kind of says it, they're like, I'm going to say servant leadership. I excel servant leadership in my, What Greenleaf says is that a servant leader is someone who puts another person's highest priority needs as your first priority. So they didn't say it was one of the things that you could do as a leader, but that the first priority is to make sure their highest priority is your first priority. And he said that the person who's in the presence of other people's lives will always get better when you're around a person who's a real servant leader. If you're around someone who really gets it, your life will improve if you're around them. You'll get healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, and you'll likely become another servant leader. You'll see it and emulate it. This was his idea. How many of you in the world right now would say that you're pretty close to a servant leader? You don't have to put your hands up, but just think about it. You're real close. You got it all figured out. The way that I lead, right? You're dispensing power. I'm giving glory and freedom to other people. I'm elevating other people. I try to get every obstacle out of the way so that they can get to the front, right? This is idea. Now, this is a spot I was thinking about for today. How does John 13 really speak about what a servant leader looks like? Well, I think we've heard that before. So, reading John 13, there are other principles that are happening in there that I think speak to servant leadership in a negative. Not like servant leadership is bad, but it's speaking into the negative. It'll make sense when I get there. You with me? Just smile and say, you're okay. Good. All right, we're good. You're going to come away seeing a servant leader, right? But what you don't look when you see it are the temptations of servant leadership and where it ultimately fails. And I think this is what John 13 is going to speak to. A room full of people right now, all of you in here are probably really good leaders. You're probably pretty decent servant leaders most of the time. And you've done a lot of good. You've probably given money away. You have elevated people who you work with so that they can be better than they were before. But every good act, servant leadership, doesn't come without temptation. And this is what John 13 is going to speak to. Okay, are you ready? Are you good? The first temptation, okay, is to serve your friends, but not your enemies. Well, isn't that just really put a pickle in the whole situation, doesn't it? It's really easy for me to elevate AJ. I'd have a hard time elevating, I can't think of an enemy of mine. I don't know. I'm not a supervillain or a hero, right? So it's like, I'm not like Megamind, But it's hard. It's easy to serve the people who are around you, you're connected with. It's hard to like someone who has wronged you to be like, I'm going to make their life better. Like whenever I serve the people who I think deserve to be served. That's our first temptation. I can be a servant leader. There's our first tripping point. But when you calculate, right, who will know this, who will be grateful, who's going to pay it forward, your actions look like Jesus. but the heart of it isn't in the right spot. Think about it. In the last meal, John even takes a moment to remind us in the middle of this foot washing that the devil had already prompted Judas Iscariot to betray Jesus. He was at the table, wasn't he? And we learn that Jesus, even though he knew it, in spite of that knowledge that the betrayer was at the table, he still gets up and gets behind Judas's feet and washes the feet of the person who will betray him. There's our first temptation John gives us. He probably did 11 of those foot washings pretty okay, It's the 12th. That's a line I don't like to cross. Because I'm afraid. If I serve my enemies, I'm empowering them. Does it convince them that they're right? Does it give them an advantage? If I decided in my heart to let people take advantage of me, then I can't be manipulated again. But I have to decide to serve knowing that that could happen. If I serve knowing that they could take advantage of me, I'm not going to be manipulated by it. But I got to know it can happen. Whenever I serve only the people that I think will be grateful, that will use it, that will pay it forward, it's control. To manage my self-image, to my power, my dignity. I forget that serving is about letting go of my self-image, my power, my control, and my dignity. That's what makes it an act of service. It's a mindset. It's not really an act, right? Whenever I use serving to get people to do something that I want them to do, it's not a service anymore. That's called manipulation. That's control. To serve is to do something for another person, not for what is in them, but because they deserve it. But for what's in you. It's your nature to do it. There's your Father in heaven causes the rain to fall on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you only love people who love you, how is that any different from what tax collectors do? And if you only greet people who greet you, how is that different from what the pagans already do? The reason that Jesus serves Judas is not because he wants to impress him or because you're trying to change him or because he really even deserves it. The reason that you serve Judas is because you're not Judas. I say things like that, and people in the room already have their own personal situation brought up in their mind. It's like, that's a great speech, Phil. But you don't understand how complex my situation is, right? I had a professor say this to me one time. We were discussing very difficult passages, and they say this often if we get hampered up, is, I can't change what's written in here. Isn't that the worst? I can't make it say something different. If I wrote the Sermon on the Mount, I would edit it, right? I would take some stuff out. So make it a little easier to handle. It just says what it says. So however complex the situation is, the thing you have to remember is at the end of the day, you have to be able to do something that tax collectors and pagans don't do. You have to have righteousness, not just a belief system. An actual way that you exceed the righteousness that describes the Pharisees. If you don't wash your betrayer's feet, how will you ever overcome evil with good? That's our first temptation. Isn't this less fun? The second temptation is to be tempted to serve without becoming a servant. When I serve people, I'm in charge, right? I get to be in charge. When I become a servant, I'm not in charge. See, when I serve people, I temporarily step out of a position to perform a menial little task. You know what I'm saying, right? But when I become a servant, I am the menial task. Right? There's nothing really below you anymore. And the text says in the middle of the meal, while the others are still eating, Jesus gets up, disrobes himself of his outer garment, of his identity as a rabbi, right? He takes off this outer thing. He wraps a towel around his waist. Only slaves did that. And then he goes around the back of the men while they're seated at the table. And I don't know if you remember this, but you sit at the table on your knees, so your feet are behind you, and they're sitting like this at the table, and their legs are sticking out that way. And he starts to wash their feet. He didn't do often what we think of when, how many of you have ever, unfortunately, been at a camp or a retreat where they're like, we're going to wash each other's feet? Yeah? Anyone? Yeah. Those are, boy, oh boy. You don't do it like that, right? In there, they're like gently pouring water over their feet, and there's like a cloth made of linen, and they're like, I'm washing your feet. It's so horrible. I got a story about it just a little bit later. But these feet were really dirty, like really gross. Like camp feet are gross, but disciples' feet in, ancient Palestinian area, not great. They've been walking around the roads outside, and when anyone washed their feet, you had to like scrub them in between the toes to get the junk out. And it's not a gentle scrub. Jesus is taking care of a need that would happen that these people would take care of normally, that failed to take care of their own bodies before they would eat. I've often been taught as a pastor all through seminary that you got to learn to have boundaries. You got to build a shed. That's how one of my professors talked about it. You got to have a shed. I need my boundaries. Because after I have served other people, there's something of a life that I want to have to go back to. Like if I don't have boundaries with the people I serve, my life gets intertwined in a way that I can't leave that position anymore. That's why they tell you, you shouldn't really be good friends with the people in your congregation. Pastorates are some of the loneliest people that have ever existed. They're so lonely. Just so lonely. So I'm friends with pastors. That's from other towns. That's why we find that in each other. You got to have those boundaries, right? There's something of a life I want to have apart from the people who I'm serving. And so I have to have other things, and I have to manage those things really well. And you create these boundaries around your time, around your structure, your agenda, the stuff that people expect from you. You create a me space where I do what I need to do. And therein lies the difference between one who serves and one who is a servant. Don't misunderstand me here for a second. The one who is a servant also has boundaries, but they're not probably your boundaries. The boundaries you came in with today protect you from losing a life that you love, that you're familiar with, that you need to produce and what you want to produce. But the boundaries of a servant are those that protect the other person, not you. Do you hear what I'm saying? I can have my boundaries, but the boundaries of a servant is one that doesn't protect me. It's one that protects the person I'm serving. You good? The third one. Tempted to serve without being served. This is where I'll tell a foot washing circle story. I was once young, and I led middle school camp at Camp Adventure. Now, middle schoolers are what ages?
14.
Put them in your head. And I thought, what would be a really great object lesson after one of the evening services? What if we had all of the people wash the next person's foot? You've never seen this done? So I started by washing one of the counselor's feet to my left, and it worked its way around the circle. And I was so happy. It was like, this can't get any worse. It works really great until there's a moment when I watched it get closer and the last person next to me got their foot washed. And then something happened I didn't calculate. They turned to me to wash my foot. So I had like an 8-year-old, or I don't know how old, you know what I mean? They were like, I have to wash your feet. I kind of forgot that circles close, like the last person would do me. And it's really just horrifically awkward to get your foot washed. And I wasn't ready for that moment, right? When you learn the first time, you think it's hard to wash someone else's feet. In a moment, when you do it, you realize the worst part is having somebody else wash your foot. That's what I learned there. Oddly enough, having a 8th grader wash my foot was a difficult experience. Because in a day when servant leader is the mantra, the thing that we all strive to be, right? I improve my reputation by coming down and washing other people's feet. I can improve my reputation by serving somebody else. There is power in that. The hard thing is sitting up and letting somebody else wash yours. Because when I'm washing your feet, I have, there's resourcefulness and dignity and honor. And when I sit there and let you wash mine, suddenly I'm vulnerable and needy. So it's not a surprise that Peter said, "You'll never wash my feet." There's two reasons, right? Jesus, that's below you. That's the first one, right? Peter, this is below you, Jesus. This is what the slaves do. And the other reason is, Jesus, that's below me. Every time in the Bible when someone's feet are washed, it's always the person himself who washes their own feet. They wash their own feet. You can't really find an instance in the Bible where somebody washes another person's foot, John, right? It's always wash your own. So why would I sit here and let you do that for me, what I can do for myself? Because sometimes to be a servant is to wash other people's feet, and sometimes being the best thing a servant can do is let other people wash yours. So go to your conversations after church, wherever, that you have with one another in your group, and this is the thing. Hey, this is why I need you. When you do this for me, I value it because I can't do it for myself. When you exercise those gifts, when you carry that weight for me, you saved something. I needed it. You with me? Hard to be certain. I'm going to read this little section from Henry Nouwen's book, and then we'll get from there. Anyone ever read anything from Henry Nouwen or heard of him before this moment? Elena has. Where?
I read The Life of the Beloved in college.
Oh, what a book. Life of the Beloved. So he was a priest, well known in the academic world. He taught at Harvard, he taught at Yale, he taught at Notre Dame. And one time in his travels of academia, he met Jean Vanier, who later in his career was speaking with Nouwen. And Vanier, Henry talks about, he looked right through my soul and noticed that there was emptiness inside of it. And Vanier started something a long time ago. It's a community, it's a one another community called L'Arche. And it had different places where these people come together to live together in this community. And so he says to Henry, in a conversation, he says, "Who knows, maybe one day there'll be a home for you in one of our little communities." And so in 1986, Henry Nouwen left his teaching profession in the universities and moved into one of those communities, the L'Arche community outside of Toronto, where they cared for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And he became a person who worked at L'Arche. So I want to read a little section from this, and then I want to read the epilogue of the end of it. I got to remember what page it's on. When people have a little intellectual capacity, they let their hearts, their loving hearts, their angry hearts, their longing hearts speak directly and often unadorned. Without realizing it, the people that I came to live with made me aware of the extent to which my leadership was still a desire to control a complex situation, a confused emotion, or even an anxious mind. It took me a long time to feel safe in this unpredictable climate, and I still have moments in which I clamp down and tell everyone to shut up, get in line, listen to me, and believe what I have to say. But I'm also getting in touch with the mystery of leadership. For a large part, what it means to be led. I discover that I am learning many new things, not just about pains and struggles of wounded people, but about unique gifts and graces. They teach me about joy and peace and love and care and prayer, what I could have never learned in any academy. They teach me what nobody else could have ever taught me about grief and violence, fear and indifference. And most of all, they give me a glimpse of God's first love, often at moments when I start feeling depressed or discouraged. So this book is it's a speech that he gave in Washington, D.C., all compiled into the book, but he gave a nice little epilogue to the whole thing. And it's in the name of Jesus. The whole book is the speech, and then he gives an epilogue where he talks about the act of giving the speech and what went on behind the scenes to set it up. And that's how I'm going to end the service today. So he had to give it in Washington, D.C. By then, he's a really well-established writer, well-known in academic circles, so he's going to D.C. to speak to a ballroom of ministers and priests. And he decides he's going to take one of the people from L'Arche, where he's at in Toronto, named Bill Van Buren, one of his friends there at the L'Arche community. So they fly into Washington, D.C., and they get put up in the Clarendon Hotel, sitting on the Potomac River. And he says this, and it's long, but it's really good. Are you ready? Okay. They get put up in the hotel. On the table in Bill's room, there was a basket with fruit and a bottle of wine. Bill loved it. He was a veteran TV watcher. He settled comfortably on his queen-size bed and checked all the channels with his remote control box. By the time it came for us to bring our good news, it came together quickly. After a delicious buffet for dinner, in one of the ballrooms decorated with golden statues and little fountains, Vincent Dwyer introduced me to the audience. And at that moment, I didn't know what Bill had meant when he said we would do this speech together. I opened it up by saying I hadn't come alone, but was very happy that Bill had come with me. And then I took my handwritten text and began my address. And at that moment, I saw that Bill had left his seat, walked up to the podium, and planted himself behind me. It was clear that Bill had more in mind about what doing it together had meant. Each time I finished reading a page, he took it away and put it upside down on a small table close by. I felt very much at ease with this and started to feel Bill's presence as a bit of support. But Bill had more in mind. When I had began to speak about the temptation that turns stones into bread as temptation to be relevant, he interrupted me and said loudly for everyone to hear, "I've heard that before." He had indeed. He just wanted the priests and the ministers who were listening to know that he knew me quite well and was familiar with my ideas. For me, however, it felt like a gentle, loving reminder that my thoughts were not as new as my audience wanted to believe. Bill's intervention created a new atmosphere in the ballroom, lighter, easier, and more playful. Somehow, Bill had taken away the seriousness of this occasion that had brought me to this homespun normality. As I continued my presentation, I felt more and more that we were indeed doing this together. When I came to the second part and was reading the words, the question most asked by handicapped people with whom I live with was, "Are you home tonight?" Bill interrupted me and said, "That's right, that's what John Smeltzer always asks him." There was something disarming about his remark. Bill knew John Smeltzer very well from having lived with him in the same house for quite some years. He simply wanted people to know about his friend. It was as if he drew the audience towards us, inviting them into an intimacy of our common life. After finishing reading my text, the people had shown their appreciation. Bill said to me, "Henry, can I say something now?" My first reaction was, how am I going to handle this? He could start rambling and create an embarrassing situation, but I caught myself in my presumption and that he had nothing of importance to say, and I said to the audience, "Will you please sit down? Bill would like to say a few words." Bill took the microphone and said, with all the difficulties that he had in speaking, "Last time when Henry went to Boston, he took John Smeltzer with him. This time, he wanted me to come with him to Washington, and I am very glad to have been here with you. Thank you very much." That was it. Everyone stood up and gave him a warm applause. And as he walked away from the podium, Bill said to me, "How'd you like my speech?" "Very much. Everyone was very happy to have seen you." Bill was delighted, and as people gathered for drinks, he felt freer than ever. As we flew back to Toronto, Bill looked up from his word puzzle book that he takes with him wherever he goes, and he said, "Henry, did you like our trip?" "Oh, yes," I answered. "It was wonderful, and I'm glad that you came with me." Bill looked at me attentively and then said, "And we did it together, didn't we?" It was then that I realized the full truth of Jesus' words, that wherever 2 or 3 meet in my name, I am among them. In the past, I've always given lectures and sermons and addresses and speeches about myself. Often I had wondered how much of that would be remembered. But it then dawned on me that most likely much of what I had said would not be long remembered, but that Bill and I doing it together would not easily be forgotten. I hoped and prayed that Jesus, who had sent us out together, had been with us during the journey, would have become really present in those that gathered at the Clarendon Hotel. And as we landed, I said to Bill, "Bill, thanks so much for coming with me. It was a wonderful trip, and we did it together in Jesus' name." And for the first time, I meant it. Some of you are extremely connected, powerful people. You are smart, you're talented, you're the ones that deliver the speech. But while you're always serving, sometimes you're not allowing somebody else who's not so smart, talented, connected, powerful, or rich to get up and do something. Leading and following in the kingdom of God are not positions, they're acts. And so you never are in one for too long. You got to move and get in another one. The 3 temptations, you probably lost it at number 1. You got enemies you can't serve. They'll take advantage of me. Some might say, no, I'm good at serving, but I'm not fully a servant. I like control too much. Maybe you're saying, I'm good at helping people, I just don't like other people helping me. Here's the vision. Let this idea be in you, which is the one that comes from Jesus Christ, who being in the form of God did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but made himself to have no reputation, and to take upon himself the form of a servant, and be obedient unto death, yes, even death unto a cross. Therefore, while he was still doing this, God highly exalted him, and gave him a name that above every other name, that at the name of Jesus every knee will bow, every tongue confesses that Jesus Christ is servant Lord, the Lord of God, the Father. Let's pray.